All right, welcome back to the podcast. We got another special episode for you today, and with special guest Dylan Tamkin. How are you doing today, Dylan?
I'm doing good. It's a nice Friday. Feeling like spring again, so lot to be happy about right now.
Yeah, love that. It's honestly a pretty cold day outside right now, but it's sunny out. And so on this podcast, we talk about emotional intelligence, self-love, and mental health. Have any of those topics kind of been on your mind lately?
Yeah, I think a lot of people have been dealing with a lot of different things, especially over this year, and especially over the changes. Like being a college student and being a senior during the pandemic hasn't been necessarily easy. It's been
Yeah.
but no, it's a good time to get focused on like other things, try out hobbies. I made my own podcast. You listen to it, and that was just something to do with my buddies and try to have some fun with it and doing things like that have been pretty good, and a little journaling here and there, that kind of stuff, but nothing too insane. Trying to finish off school strong and just try to enjoy the last bit of this chapter of my life, I guess.
I love that. So you said you started journaling. When did you start that?
Yeah, so I picked it up probably maybe around July. It was kind of hit or miss over the summer. You know, I was in this routine, I guess, where I like it wasn't a healthy routine, but I'd get up, play Xbox, then like eat dinner and then play Xbox. Like I was not eating enough. I was not. It wasn't a healthy lifestyle. And then I sort of started to pick it up when the summer was really going. Went on a couple hikes with my brother and stuff like that, and then yeah, it was just kind of a way for me to jot down sort of ideas, thoughts, things like that. And
Yeah, so like I know journaling was one of the things that really helped me with my mental health journey, and it wasn't something that anybody really taught me. And when I started, it was more just like a stream of consciousness, just like writing anything that came to my mind. And then over time, I started just like writing a lot of poetry, journaling, and realized that that's what I liked. Like, do you have any certain like technique or method, or do you kind of just stream of consciousness?
so yeah, so it's not like an everyday thing. It's more like when I have I started off. I did a dream journaling when I was really young. I think a lot of kids sort of do that, um, and that was pretty enjoyable, I'd say. But right now, it's been random absurd business idea followed by sort of a stream of conscious type situation, and then you know sort of other thoughts. Like well, not really long term planning, more like short term planning, goal orientation, I guess, is something that and that was kind of really grown more probably in the fall due to a class I was in where the professor just really sort of brought it all together for like a business class we don't really see.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so it kind of since then made become more goal oriented, steps, sort of planning how to achieve not necessarily a lofty goal, but try to keep on the right direction.
I like that. I also like how you said dream journal. I actually just started a dream journal the other week, and it's honestly been crazy. I haven't been able to remember a lot of my dreams, but like I often just wake up and write like one sentence or like one nugget from my dream, which honestly like I learned like one lesson from, which is crazy. Like have you noticed like having like crazy dreams as of late or not?
Well, I think when I first started, like I had like this really wild recurring dream for like from like maybe like eighth grade to like still happens, here and there. And it's like a really fucked up one about like World War I and like going over a trench and just getting shot in the head. So it's really fucked up, really dark. And I'm just like, A, no idea how that's a recurring dream. But that's like the craziest one. But most of the time it's like, when I really remember a dream, it's almost a lucid dream in a sense, but I always go too far. I'm like, oh, let's just jump off the building, try to fly, and then it doesn't work, and then you wake up. So it's like I gotta like do better at like not just jumping to like the coolest part you can do in a dream, but like kind of relaxing with it.
That's unreal. I want to talk about that, like that World War I thing. That's crazy because like I like part of me thinks like, wow, like could that be like you like remembering like a past life? And like another part of it is like, do you remember like are you big into like history and like watching like movies about that stuff?
Yeah, so no, I'm a pretty big history buff. I'd say I'm not as I know definitely people like I know my buddy Connor Noonan, he's way more into history than I am and like war and stuff like that. But I'm like a hobby that I didn't really know I had was like maps and geography and using that kind of stuff. But and just honestly weirdly knowing that kind of stuff for someone who's very uncultured and very not a world traveler. But I think it's just I don't know. I've been trying to piece it together, and it doesn't make sense because it's never when I'm stressed or anything. It's never when I'm like going through anything. It just kind of just like occurs, and it's and it has there's almost no rhyme or reason, but it's always the same exact thing.
Yeah. I think one of the interesting things about it also is like sharing it is that you realize that I bet a ton of other people have like a very, 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 very similar dream. Do you notice? I don't know if you like remember very much, but like, do you remember like ever feeling like an intense pain during the dream? Like if you get like shot in the dream, like do you feel the pain in the moment or not really?
It's more that it's like it's kind of like it has a build up. I don't know if you're a World War One person, but it was trench warfare. So it's very slow paced, and then the young guys had to go over first and face a line of fire. Um, so basically, it was sometimes it gets drawn out a little further than others. Sometimes I get through a little bit, and then I get shot. Sometimes it's like right away, but there's never any like pain associated with it. And sometimes I don't even wake up. Sometimes
Wow.
it's sometimes I just go back to another dream where I will never remember. But I don't know, it's a weird one.
That's absurd. Like I want to share a dream that basically that I had in that I made a YouTube video about it. Like I woke up, I had this dream like twice within like a 2 week span, and I was just trying to like piece it together. And I thought that like talking about it on camera would help me like maybe try to justify it. But what I've also noticed is that this has been my most viewed video. So other people have been having this dream also. I call it like the falling elevator dream. So like I'll be going up in an elevator and like all of a sudden like we'll get to like the 20th floor or something and the elevator will just free fall and like bang crash on the ground. And it happened to me twice over like a 2 week span, maybe in like July of last year. And what I noticed is that first of all, like we never like died in the dream when it crashed, but I remember feeling like this immense pain and like we were like someplace, and then I was always in the elevator with other people for one thing, and like we were all like crying and like other people would like come and be like, what happened to you guys? Like you guys look like a mess. And then I remember waking up and like feeling like I had a concussion and being like, wow, like was that more real than I thought it was? And then also
Yeah.
like people commenting on this dream, like, yeah, I had a similar dream. And then I'm thinking like, were these people in the dream with me?
Yeah. So I don't know. Have you done like a good amount of research on dreams and stuff like that?
Not really. I kind of just try to
So
like think within. Like, I don't know.
so there's a really weird thing. So when you're in a dream, any person that's in your dream, you've somehow seen in real life. Your brain like or like seen in like a cartoon or a movie. Like you cannot like make up someone that you've never personally viewed in any way. Whether it's someone you're just passing on the street, someone that you see on like like Instagram, something like that. So everyone that it's in your dream is somehow made up through like a subconscious thing.
Interesting.
At
Like
least that's my research on it.
this is what I
Again, not quoting anything.
this is what I think. Like I basically want to know if like people in like whether dreams are like something you're making up in your mind or if it's like another dimension that you're like being coming into contact with. Like what do you think about that?
Um, I don't know. I think it's always something that's debated. Whether it's more of a spiritual thing, whether it's more of a a religious thing or something like that. But I always just think it's I think a dream. I think it's your brain sort of solving a problem or just letting you know that's when like you're most relaxed. You're sleeping. It's kind of just your brain just thinking things out and being creative, and then sometimes it goes wrong or goes right. I don't. I'd like to think that there's a bigger picture with it, but I don't know. I'm sort of a little bit of a realist, and I think it's just almost kind of how you stay to your root is like an imagination. It's kind of just because most people like say you're our age, you're not very imaginative. A lot of people, you're not very, you focus on like other things, but it's kind of just a way for your brain to like recoup and almost like a sharpening stone, I guess. like for
Yeah.
a sword. Like that's what I think a dream is really.
I like that perspective. Like one of the things I think about it, and I also wrote a poem about this. It's like whether dreams are like real or whether they're not, like you still experience things, like you still learn lessons, you still feel it. So like, does it really matter if they're real or not? And it's the same thing that like when you were 11, you can't really remember anything that you did, but like just because you can't remember it, does it mean that it didn't happen to you, that you didn't learn lessons and you don't still hold those like emotions from that event to now?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Do you ever see Inside Out, that movie?
Nah.
So it's a Disney movie that like talks about, memories, and it's basically it's a cartoon, but it's I remember watching like Driver's Ed for some reason after like, but basically it kind of touches on that, like, as you grow up, like your memories, they're stored, but like if they're not as recently on the forefront of your decision making, but they're still like based in how you make decisions and how you learn from things. But I also think like dreams can just be fucking weird, like like there's so many like weird things that can happen in a dream that you think about, and you think about the next day and you're like, yeah, this situation will never come. This none of this made sense. None of the interactions are almost even real per se. Like they I don't know. It's just I don't know. I guess I've always been someone who like does a pretty good job at spotting my dreams, remembering my dreams, that kind of stuff. But even then, it's like even like a couple hours later, you kind of forget some of it, and you
Yeah.
forget more and more.
And one of the things that I think also is that we think that the things that happen in dreams are weird, but like we don't really question the weirdness of things that are happening like right here in like the real world. Like we have all this like crazy shit going on and like we don't question any of it because like we're around it every day to the point where like we just think it's normal.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think taking a step back, and that's the biggest thing I think with dealing with anything, is just taking a step back and trying to piece it together, because there are some absolute absurd things going on in the world today, like that looking back, like say I was say we're in high school, I was like none of this shit would make any sense, like
Yeah.
it doesn't, like, but I don't know, it just it's almost like what your brain's doing in a dream is trying to also internalize what's happening outside of that.
Yeah.
It's almost as a way for you to, because a lot of people are really busy, a lot of people doing a lot of things, and when you're asleep, like that's your brain also trying to like take a step back, really because you're asleep, but like trying to internalize each thing that's happening around you, and whether you see it as a real thing or not, whether like you're having a dream about a news headline that popped up on your phone, it's like there's almost no rhyme or reason, but it kind of does. If you really get into it, you can kind of almost see a clearer picture and see a better path, I guess.
Yeah, and exactly. It's that we're all so busy that a lot of people don't have time to like take care of their mental health and don't have time to like ask themselves how they're feeling. And that's kind of getting reflected in like the life they have outside. So like one thing that dreams might be is like finding a way to get them to actually feel these like intense emotions and then maybe like putting images on it. And maybe the images are just like completely made up. Like you're still feeling the emotions. You're still like kind of like emotionally healing in a way, like while you're sleeping, and to the point where you wake up. Like I woke up this morning and I was like, wow, like did like 500 years go by? Like it felt like I lived like a whole lifetime last night.
Yeah, I mean that happens. It's kind of insane, but it's also, I mean, like growing up, like and everything, I don't think I'm necessarily someone who like you know deals with their emotions and mental health head on. I think it's almost like I have my own ways of dealing with things, and whether they're classified as really healthy, probably not. Um, but it's kind of just something that putting like effort into things like podcasts, and putting effort into things like like working out, things like that, like do a lot for mental health, and do a lot for that without you really even noticing, because you're putting your stress and everything it's in you into a into a healthy alternative. I'm not saying like don't go to therapy, because I think it's a very valuable thing, but as someone, I mean, growing up in the way that I did, being like a triplet, being all that kind of stuff, you're kind of almost have to find a way to adapt and find a way to attack everything head on. And
Yeah.
it's just I think dreams have definitely been a good way. So looking back, even to this conversation, that's probably a good output for me.
Yeah, I like how you mentioned that also, because like one of the things I like to find out on this podcast is like everybody tries different things for their mental health. Everybody has different like things that help them with their self-care. And it's not like one thing is better than another. It's that everybody is different. Everybody is
Yeah.
unique. So you said like you like exercise, like that's a great thing. Like doing a podcast, doing things that are creative. Like are there other things that you do on like either a daily or weekly basis for like self-care, mental health, like take care of yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it's I get invested in. I think it's the things that you find joy in, which has been definitely a big issue for people over the past year. I think across like the entire country, across the world, is without the full social ability that a lot of people have, it's been a lot on them. And I think everyone was kind of down in like March and April and stuff like that, and slowly developing. And even when it gets colder, like it affects people differently. It's seasonal, but basically it's been you know like I like playing video games. I haven't been playing much, but it's kind of that's a good stress reliever. I think a lot of people sometimes get more stress from playing video games, which is like a whole other battle there. It's music. It's listening to podcasts. I love listening to podcasts, whether it's like a sport one, what's a barstool one, whether it's some other things, and it just finding a way to not necessarily like not approach any issues you're having. And again, I feel like I'm been kind of blessed to not have that many you know demons or issues throughout my entire life, but whether stress is real for everyone, but it's more that you're just finding a way to really like center yourself, I think. Also, I
Yeah.
apologize. My roommates are a little loud. I don't know if you can pick it up.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. It's not perfect. We're in the beginning stages of the podcast. We're in the very low. Like obviously, I want to get to the point where like I can like do these in person, but like that's not how the world is right now. And like I'm also like wish I was in Amherst. Like wish I was like, but just living at home at the moment. I was actually gonna say something. I just forgot. What were we just talking about?
um, like how you're dealing with stress, how you deal
Oh
with
yeah,
problems. So like for
yeah.
me, video games, music, that kind of thing.
So I was gonna say, so this is something I've said in a couple of podcasts, and I want to get your perspective on this. I think that like for people that are like in school, like probably like age 22 and younger, like probably 90% of our stress, the majority of our stress comes from school and like schoolwork and most stuff that doesn't really matter. Do you think that that's the case with you? It's like I know that's the case with me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think I have an interesting approach to schoolwork. I think it's almost it's if I don't see the full value of it, I don't put it that high on my list, which is not great if I'm trying to get a good GPA or for job application stuff like that. But it's kind of that, especially with college. I think you see classes that you really enjoy and you see classes that you really like, and those are the ones that even if they have a high workload, you don't feel necessarily stressed about it because you're enjoying what you're learning.
Yeah. I like how you said that, but because I know that for me, like in high school, like my biggest priority was like getting a high GPA, like getting good grades, and like I did, but I didn't really spend a lot of time on like extracurriculars or like hobbies or like my mental health. So I noticed that that really deteriorated, and I didn't feel like very fulfilled. And then I got to college, and I focused less on my grades, and I still get fine grades, but I focused more on like my mental health and building passions and starting a business. And I feel like that's the thing that's why I'll get a job. That's the value I add. And it has nothing to do with what I've done in classrooms, like being able to memorize information for a multiple choice test in a subject that you're never gonna even talk about in the rest of your life. Like, do you feel like you would have benefited from maybe in middle school or high school if they had an emotional intelligence class?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely a good idea. I think obviously the world's different, and I mean when we were still growing up, it was still sort of the world was way different than it is today. There's no way around that. It was still very stigmatic and stereotypical of the identity of every person in school. If you didn't, you had to fit a bill. Like, I mean, I love sports. I love playing sports, and that's that was the ideology of a lot of guys and growing up, and a lot of that, sure, there's lessons learned in those activities, but you kind of, you know, through good programming, whether it's and I'm also a former summer camp counselor, so I'm also someone who's seen that in a lot of cases it benefits things like that, and really being the ability for someone to open up, I think, is something that people with different comfort zones. Sure, that's not a debate. People get different comfort zones with other people, but through whether that's a real class, I think how it is now, a class would be kind of tough to get people to really buy into. But whether that's say you're in middle school, say you have like a pretty good guidance counselor or something like that, and whether it's taking time throughout the week, rotating around, but like you know ideally that would be a class. But as of now, I think it's slowly build up to increasing that perception within especially young kids.
Yeah, that's one of my main goals, like to try to get that into schools, because like I noticed that. So,
Mm.
it's required that you take an English class. It's required that you take
Yeah.
math. It's required that you take science. It's required that you take history. But the only thing that's really going to help you in your life is emotional intelligence. Because, oh, so you read a bunch of Shakespeare and you didn't understand it, or you didn't even read the books because you didn't care about it at all, or you're learning pre-calculus and learning all this stuff, but you're not going to become an engineer, a mathematician. Or I'm learning about all this history that it's not even the full story. It's just the American story that they tell us. It's not even the full picture. But emotions, like teaching you to look within yourself, teaching you to journal, teaching you to meditate. Do you meditate at all?
I actually do here and there. I don't know. I first did that probably, I think it was senior year, maybe high school, in gym class. We're doing like a yoga meditation sort of unit. So I picked up the Shavasana sort of meditation, which is like palms open, laying on your back on the ground, lights off, maybe some light music, that kind of stuff. Um, and yeah, maybe I do that for 20 minutes a week. It's kind of just something that, sort of declutters, I guess, kind of makes you like, it's weird to say, but it's kind of energizing. Um, and I kind of don't really focus on something. I kind of just try to get, your mind in between sort of being awake and being asleep, that sort of middle ground where you're kind of just, you know, almost, it feels corny to say, but at peace, I guess. I
I
feel,
I agree 100%. Like I'll definitely share my perspective, but I want to ask you. So you said you maybe do like 20 minutes a week. Is that like maybe like 3 minutes a day, or is it like once a week for 20 minutes?
it's once a week. It's something that I think that whole sort of mantra, I guess, of that type of meditation. It's one sort of, it's basically a duration of like a good nap, but you're not asleep at all. Um, and like I don't know, it's just something that maybe I'll do on a Sunday night, maybe I'll do middle of the week. It's not really a rhyme or reason to one, but it definitely happens every week. And I mean, that was a good skill taught, I think, in high school. I think it's something that I didn't think I would use, and then started picking it up probably the last year, 2 years, doing it again in my regular life, I guess.
Yeah, and it's something so simple that I think like why aren't you taught meditation in kindergarten? Because it's as simple as just like sitting there and breathing. And the effects that I've seen on my mental health, I don't know about everybody else's mental health, but it has just had such a profoundly positive impact on my mental health. When I started meditating, I could only do it for like 30 seconds at a time because you're so overwhelmed with the thoughts in your mind and then you build up. One of the things that I always say is that the most important thing in meditation is just consistency. So like it's better to do it like every day for like 2 minutes than like once a week for like 5 minutes. And like the more you build up and the more you just start to basically flex this muscle in your mind, going, maybe a good analogy is going to the gym for your mind, or also like, kind of like cleaning your mind with a golden sponge. That's one thing I've said before. But I'm at the point now where like I pretty much meditate for probably 20 minutes to start the day, and I just never want to do without it because I see just the such a large impact that it's had on the rest of my day. And another thing that I do also, I want to ask, do you do cold showers at all?
Um, I don't do them for the I know a lot about like the whole mindfulness and breathing aspect of a cold shower. I occasionally do them only after like a workout, just for the pure muscle point of view. I've never really focused on them for the mindfulness aspect of it, but I definitely am aware of the benefits. But it's something that I don't know. I'm also someone who does really quick showers in general, so I'm in and out in like 3 4 minutes. So it's something that I could sometimes I end with a cold shower at the end, just like the end of the shower, but not really that regularly as well.
Yeah, that's what I do. So I take the shower warm and then I turn it cold and I stand in there for maybe 30 seconds to a minute or more. And the reason that I ended up getting into it is when I was going through like depression and anxiety my freshman year in college, I remember just nothing working for me. Like I tried going to therapy and I realized that that just didn't work for me. Maybe it works for some people, but I noticed that me just like venting didn't really do anything for me. I remember Google searching cures for depression. The only two things that came up were meditation and cold showers. And my first reaction was, that's dumb, but I'm going to try it because nothing else has worked. And I noticed that meditation isn't a magic pill. You got to like do it and the results come over time. But cold showers, I instantly just noticed just becoming happy and just noticing there's probably something that goes on in your mind, like a chemical imbalance, but you can't be sad coming out of a cold shower. You're just so happy, and that's the way I start every morning now. Just ending that shower cold, and have just noticed how much that just helped with my personal development and mental health as a whole.
Yeah, cold showers are my bad. Cold showers are definitely something that it definitely takes a long time to adjust to. I think like the first time you have like a really cold shower or like you're ending a cold shower, like, occasionally throughout freshman sophomore year maybe here and there just for like trying something out for like no real gain. I wasn't really putting it as a thing, but you leave out and you're just like breathing heavily. You're you know what I mean? Because like I also think it's more of like I'm not like a super like natural person. I'm not like that my mentality, but it's definitely the more natural way to I guess for a human to bathe. I guess like say you're in like that you know the year zero. They're probably not using warm baths. you know, it's it's definitely something that I think especially seeing it with a lot of trends and a lot of sort of influencers, that kind of stuff is kind of getting back to that sort of natural symbiotic state of humans. And I think that's something that's almost being pressed every day and slowly growing and slowly trying to people to adapt back to a a more, I don't know, not necessarily hunter gatherer mentality, but like trying to get back to that sort of root.
I never even thought about it like that, but that makes a ton of sense because obviously they didn't used to have hot water. And it's one thing that's just pushing your comfort zone. We like to stay in our little small, tiny boxes of comfort zones. And I love how you said, like, you just did it because you like to try new things. And that's something that I wish a lot of more people would like to just try new things because you're not going to find something that you're truly passionate about unless you try a lot of things. I didn't know that I liked to like write poetry when I was in high school, middle school, elementary school. Like all I did was play sports. I love sports, but when you get to college and you can't play on like the team anymore, you can still do extracurriculars, but you need to find other things that work for you. And that was one of the things that worked for me. What sports did you play? And like, do you still play
Yeah.
them now?
So I mean, I feel like everyone coming from like New England probably played soccer at some point. Growing up, wasn't too good at it, so I kind of stopped maybe around the age of 8. Then I was playing hockey, uh, played a little baseball here and there. Wasn't great. Uh, Probably played the minimum number of innings allowed in 8th grade. Um, then played lacrosse for a while too, and then I wasn't allowed to play football until my freshman year of high school. So I started playing football in high school. That was probably, and I played rugby in my senior year of high school as well. Um, yeah, so a lot of sports. It's looking back, I wish I played a certain sport that I love now, but it wasn't a thing. Like my favorite sport right now is F1, Formula One, definitely, and that's just not something you can really get into that position in the States. I think it's kind
Yeah,
of a cultural thing.
that's
Um,
interesting. I see the poster behind you.
yeah, that's that's from like I think 1967. That's just a reprint, but that's Monaco in '67.
So how did you get into that then?
Yeah, so I think I've always been someone who enjoys cars, and it's someone that I've always been interested in. I think even before I could drive, I was pretty taken by motor vehicles, and then slowly over college, I sort of started whether it's on YouTube, popped up in like a Discover thing. It's tracking your data, the whole thing, and it kind of just started blossoming into like me falling in love with like some of the youth content creators on the sport, and then slowly over time watching replays from races from like the 80s and 90s and to early 2000s, and then probably I think junior year, so the start of junior year, no, halfway through sophomore year, I sort of started fully watching the sport. Um, and yeah, so it kind of just became a sort of passion of mine. And then when Netflix came out with their docu series, it kind of reinvigorated a lot of fan base in the U.S. Like now, all my buddies from home are really hooked on it, and then a couple of my friends here in Amherst are also getting pretty hooked on the sport too.
That's awesome. Do you bet on it? That's another question I have.
Um, I'm not a big sports better, mostly because my picks always miss. Um, um, I definitely think if someone wanted to win a lot of money, they could fade me for a week, and they'd probably make a killing, especially on my hockey picks, because those are pretty wrong. But if I were to bet on F1, I'd probably make an all right amount of money.
That's good. Honestly, betting is not a good habit, and it's something that I've definitely been cutting back on. I used to be way more into it than I am now. But also, one of the reasons why I'm not as into it is because I didn't have anything else to do. Betting was like my big hobby, and that's originally my business was like the sportswolves.com, me sharing my betting picks and all that stuff. And that was my big passion. But then I realized that I had other passions that I wanted to pursue, and now I just don't have enough time for that stuff, which is great. And that's another thing. If you want to cut out a bad habit, you got to replace it with something else. You're not going to you can't just say, like, I want to cut out betting or I want to cut out drinking, because what's going to happen when you're tempted and you have nothing else to do and you're just sitting there and just absolutely doing nothing? And have you ever like driven one of those cars before?
Oh no, not ever gonna happen. If I wanted to, it'd probably cost me about $200,000 for 3 laps. Um, no, it's almost insane just how much money is in those.
So how do you think people get started in that sport then?
Yeah, so basically you start at the age of like 5 or 6 in go karts. So especially not really this country, but in a lot of other countries, like karting is a really big thing. And then you move up, local, regional. Say you're in a country like national karting, then you go into like lower series of that car, like a single seat race car. Um, and then slowly, hopefully, you get some sponsorship from an F1 team. They start paying for it. It's just an expensive sport. Like when you think expensive sports here, you think, oh, hockey's pretty bad. You know how much thousands of dollars you're spending on your kid or equipment, that kind of stuff. But um, say you're in, so there's like basically say like minor leagues for a sport. Say you have like the farm leagues for baseball, or say it's even college football. Like in order to be in Formula 3 or Formula 2 for a year, that's going to cost that person and their family about 2 million euros for 1 year of racing, just for the shot of getting to a point where you're in F1, you're making a pretty good amount of money. But it's something that they're really working on to try to make it more affordable. But because of just you're driving a car, and you're driving a car that costs so much money to develop, that if you crash that car, like that's a big payday.
That is crazy. I didn't know it was that much money. That is, wow, that is bananas. So I want to switch topics a little. So how did you end up starting your podcast? What was like your motivation, inspiration for that?
So I haven't recorded in a bit. It was mostly when I was home, I think. But yeah, so it basically just came up out of the blue. I think, it started off, I was drunk. I recorded a little intro, and for some reason, my favorite, drunk food is the Biggie Bag from Wendy's. I think it's a steal. Um, and then so I named it the Biggie Bag, and then I was, questioning on what I want to talk about, and then, obviously, you have your passions, and I wanted to make it eventually something more, slowly where, more modeled akin towards, a really successful podcast where you're able to, have, you're repeating things, and then, slowly add in, like, interviews, that kind of stuff. But basically, two of my buddies from home, we got drunk, got on Zoom, and started talking about Star Wars, and that went on for like an hour. Um, but I was, serious. I made like, you know, a pretty detailed Word document outlining, the topics we're talking about, give them some time to prep. And because of the topic nature of it, and especially with, all the news surrounding things like that, you need to have a little time to make sure you're able to really add to something like that, like in a topic like that. I think there's a lot of podcasts where you can get on there and you can talk and have a conversation. I think those are the best ones where you're just, you know, there's a sense of, communication. And but for something that I was making, it was more like it was just drunk fun and it was enjoyable.
I love that. I'm ready to ask some Star Wars questions now because since you've had a podcast talking about Star Wars, just for anybody who's listening, I listened to the podcast, the Star Wars one. I would highly recommend it. Had a lot of entertainment on a Saturday afternoon when I was just walking. I think actually Ricky sent it to me, which is so funny.
Yeah.
I loved it immediately. All right, my first question is actually it's not really a question. I want to share my take and then I want to hear your take.
Okay.
So I hear a lot of people shitting on the prequels, the 1, 2, and 3, and I really enjoyed the prequels, 1, 2, and 3. What are your opinions on the prequels?
Um, I think it's mostly something that happens with the age of the viewer. So through everything I've seen on it, I enjoy the movies too. I think the Clone Wars was one of the coolest things. I think they really expanded it with like some TV shows, that kind of stuff. But overall, like Revenge of the Sith, I think had some amazing acting in it from a movie standpoint. But it's with anything like Marvel, anything like Star Wars, anything like that. You hit on people's nostalgia, and you have people building up such high expectations in their brains. So it's the same thing that happened with the Ewoks in episode 6. Now there were a lot of people. Some people didn't like them. Some people didn't hate them. I think Barney Stinson talked about it in How I Met Your Mother. But it's the same thing. So when your main fan base was 12 in the late 70s, and you come out with a movie in 1997 or so, maybe 8, forget the year now, but basically they're waiting so long for something that's going to be really great and really bring them back to their childhood and that sort of that drive. And then that's how people end up not liking it. Sure, there's things I would have liked to change in the movies, but overall I think they're fine as far as a piece of cinematography. I think they're actually pretty good.
Yeah, I didn't think about that, but that makes sense because those were spaced out so far between the release that the people who were really into that were so much older that they couldn't relate. But one of the things that I love about Star Wars is the lightsaber fights. And I know that episodes 1, 2, and 3 had way more lit lightsaber fights than 4, 5, and 6. I mean, you think about one of my favorite scenes of all time, which I want to talk about, is episode 1. You got Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan against Darth Maul. There's just nothing better than that scene. It's just 10 minutes of just action packed. I want to hear your
Yeah, no,
take
it's
on that.
great. The soundtrack's amazing. Duel of the Fates is one of the best songs that ever came out for the entire genre. And I think you know that also comes down to like the pure ability of film studios. Like like George Lucas basically created the idea of using lightsabers and how they filmed everything. So I mean, if you look like in the first movies, like they can't do that many motions purely because they will break the props. Um, so you're dealing with that, but then you have obviously some of the most insane acrobatic sort of martial arts style fighting that you get with that one, and it's purely mind blowing. And then they kind of delve more into that if you like really get into reading about sort of the mentality there. But it's definitely, again, it's just like it's a movie for a different generation.
Yeah.
It's saying that, sure, like I love the original trilogy just as much as anyone else, any Star Wars fan. But you got to understand that with pure technology being an inhibitor, it makes it very difficult to create this amazing world. And also, the first Star Wars weren't really, it was classified as a space opera. It was the hero's journey. That was it. And then in the other ones, it was in the prequel. It's a fall from grace. And there's almost like, sure, the movies have their own plot lines, but basically he set up a 3-movie arc where you're having an entirely different sort of type of message you're giving to the audience.
Yeah.
And it just shows that, like I personally, Revenge of the Sith is one of my favorite movies ever. Star Wars movies. I think it's amazing. The fight on Mustafar with Obi-Wan and Anakin is mind blowing, and the CGI was fine and it looked great. But you have, the ability to do more. Like they took it to do more.
Yeah. who was your favorite character from episodes 1 through 3?
1, 2, and 3. It's really hard to say because I think the issue you get with movies and like full theatrical releases is you can't really get the full sort of story of a character. But I have to say, like, and something I'm really excited for is probably Obi-Wan. I think he is he's like almost like a comic relief character in like episode 2 and 3 at least. It's just enjoyable to watch.
Yeah, I really like Ewan McGregor. I think that's how you pronounce his name as an
Yeah.
actor. I actually watched another movie of his with Scarlett Johansson recently. I forget what it's called. Oh, it's called The Island. That's a movie that really messed me up for a while. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but I would say it's a tie between, for me, Mace Windu. Gotta love that. The purple lightsaber, and then Qui-Gon. I mean, Liam Neeson kills it as always. And I just think that I want to see a spin-off movie with one of those two characters as the lead, because there's just so much that
There's
you could go into.
they're doing an Obi-Wan movie or limited series coming out Disney Plus.
Really?
Oh, yeah, it got announced. They announced the whole cast. There's Hayden Christensen is reprising his role as Darth Vader, I believe. Um, and it's a pretty good cast. And you get, I don't know, it's a good cast. It came out like a week ago, I think. And
Oh, really?
yeah, so I'm really pumped about that. But do you know why Mace Windu, Samuel Jackson wanted a purple lightsaber?
I remember reading something about it, but I forget.
It is so stupid. It's like the most Hollywood thing ever. He goes in the fight in the arena on Geonosis. He just goes, "Yeah, George, I'm not gonna be able to see myself in this. Give me a purple lightsaber."
That is unreal. Gotta love Samuel L. Jackson also. I
He
wish,
did everything.
obviously, spoiler alerts, if you haven't seen it, like, get a life. You should probably see that movie. But he had that fight won, and then Anakin had to turn on him. All right, let's go to 4, 5, and 6. One of my biggest issues, and obviously, like, it's a movie, it's not realistic. One of my biggest issues with 4, 5, and 6, and I know a lot of people are gonna hate on this, but so we have the Empire that's like a very good bad guys. They're blowing up planets, but they don't teach the stormtroopers how to actually shoot at people. They always shoot to the side. They don't actually get people. But then it seems that Han Solo is the only person who can actually shoot straight. That's one of the things that really irks me about that. What do you think about that? I know it's just a movie,
Yeah,
but
I know it is. It's almost used as a plot device for later things within the Star Wars universe. I think like it's a kid show, but it was worth a watch for Star Wars fans called Rebels, and basically a clone who defected was putting on a stormtrooper helmet. He's like, I can't even see out of this thing. So basically, they've been using it as almost satire and comic relief. Like, I don't know if you remember the scene where the stormtrooper runs into like the door, like that wasn't supposed to happen. And then in the re-release of the movie, they added a sound for that, like a thunk. Like they're kind of just taking a piss out of them. But no, it's definitely kind of insane. But it definitely is also them using a plot device. They don't want their main characters to get actually shot.
yeah, because like I understand that, guys with the lightsabers, they can deflect it, but some people around them should be getting taken down. some of the ancillary good guy characters that you don't know their name, but they're by their side.
Yeah, you only really see stormtroopers getting anyone when they're like in the walkers on episode 5 and Hoth, but you don't really see them really killing too many people.
Yeah. And now moving on to the 7, 8, and 9. Here's a big overarching question, and then we'll move into like the specific episodes. Do you think that Disney ruined Star Wars with 7, 8, and 9?
Uh, it's that's a loaded sort of question, but I think I personally didn't like it because I don't like how Disney took over and took away some of the other, like, I don't know if you're aware of canon, how it works in like universes like Star Wars and stuff like that, but it's what's as like, these events happened, this stories happened. So when they bought Star Wars, they kind of, hacked and slashed through different items of like video games, TV shows, that kind of stuff. As a pure movie going standpoint, I thought they were entertaining movies, but as a pretty diehard Star Wars fan, I think they kind of ripped away a lot of established themes and really cool story arcs that could have happened.
Yeah,
just to try and get some box office.
exactly. And I understand where they're going from. I know that specifically, and this is why I don't care about like these critics' opinions anymore, because I thought 7 was okay. I thought it was fine. It was good. It was entertaining. I really disliked 8. I didn't know what they were doing. And then I liked how they saved it at 9. I'm pretty sure they brought J.J. Abrams back for 9. I thought they really saved it at the end. I was like, all right, that's a convincing ending for me. I'm fine with that. And then I remember reading the reviews for 9, and these people were all like, they didn't do anything what they did in 8, and the guy in 8 did a great job. I was like, no, they did a great job disregarding everything he did in 8.
Yeah, eight was awful.
So I'm pretty sure they brought in a different director for 8. I don't remember his name.
I believe it was Ryan Johnson.
Yeah, I don't know if they had a really coherent plot. It seemed that they just wanted to change the plot because most of it didn't make sense from what the guy in 8 changed the plot like a ton and didn't bring it anywhere.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely, that was a god awful movie. It just didn't make sense. And then I hate how they like develop characters, like whether that's Snoke, whether that's Captain Phasma, and they just get fucking killed like instantaneously. It's like obviously you're trying to do something cool with 9, but you should be able. Like, it's like the Boba Fett thing. Like he died. So I mean, not. I don't know if you watch Mandalorian. I don't know if I can do a spoiler.
No, so the thing is, some of my friends last year had Disney Plus, and I watched like the beginning of Mandalorian, and like I don't know if it was just because it was like 2 a.m. on a Saturday night, and we came back from like a party, just like not really in it. But I just remember being like so not into it and being like, I don't want anything to do with this. And right when they brought the Baby Yoda thing into it, I was like, all right, I can't watch the show anymore. Like this show is like too dumb for me. But like I heard a lot of people like love it.
I think it's because you have, Jon Favreau as one of the main people with it, and a little bit of Dave Filoni, who's a big sort of Star Wars TV show person in general. I just think they're making like almost a grown up version of Star Wars universe. Like, sure, you have Baby Yoda, who's like a freaking meme, but you kind of get some more sort of raw, sort of human emotions that you kind of don't see in theatrical releases.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was like, dude, Bill Burr's in it. Like, it's insane to me.
I didn't know that. Bill
Burr's in 2 episodes or 3 episodes.
I love Bill Burr. Oh my god!
Like, it's like, so there's like a bunch of like weird like cameos, like not cameos, but like people in the show. Like, I don't know, the guy from like Justified plays a pretty big role in an episode, but each episode kind of has its own sort of story arc, and it's sort of building on this greater arc that kind of allows them to, sure, there's filler episodes, sure, there's build up episodes, but I think the climax in both Mandalorian season 1 and 2 was kind of astonishing comparatively to some of the other Star Wars things.
I didn't know that there were 2 seasons out. That's crazy. And I also don't know this for a fact, but just like me thinking about Bill Burr, I feel like he's not a big Star Wars guy. I feel like he's the type of guy who shits on Star Wars, which is interesting to see him in that. I don't know.
I think if you get the option to be in a Star Wars thing, you're probably gonna take it.
That's true. No, that's absolutely true. And I guess the whole Disney thing is kind of like a double-edged sword. It's kind of like if George Lucas were to continue with it, then there wouldn't be as much content out as there is now. But it's also it would be more better quality content because he'd be the one writing it, and because it's all coming from his absurd mind. And most of the stuff from Disney is like, how do we make this relatable? How do we? And I'm all for like diversity and everything, but you gotta have some depth to it. You don't just want to have characters of like different races and different backgrounds just to have them. They need to be there for a purpose. They need to, I don't
Yeah,
know.
which they're definitely like getting on. I think trying to build on a universe with so much aliens, that kind of stuff, and it's not a sci-fi show. I think it's a science fantasy sort of, that's what it really is. It's knights, it's swords, it's a western, but it's just been a pretty eye opening thing about especially seeing with some of the stuff and like in the first prequels you're able to see whether it's a metaphor, whether it's not, about how people from all different backgrounds can like I guess in the first prequel they have their government fail, but it's kind of that you're able to not see people who necessarily represent you, but you're able to see like people who like represent different people. I think it's what they're going for, and I think it's a good thought, but there's definitely points where adding in necessarily a group of people like you, if you're trying to focus on diversity, there has to be almost a goal in mind, as you said,
Yeah.
like a real use of them.
One of the things I really liked about the prequel also, like bringing up the whole government thing, like I loved all the scenes where they show like this big arena and somebody's on like the floating hovercraft doing this big speech and everybody's just cheering, and me just not understanding any like the political things they're talking about in this universe, but me just being so hyped that there's just like a whole arena of people just cheering on Palpatine when he's just like talking about whatever he's talking about.
Yeah, no, that was weird. That was weird. I didn't really get it. Like I was actually pretty pissed off. I was watching it with Ricky and my buddy and Mike and Connor and all of them, and Mike had already seen it, so he knows I'm a big Star Wars guy, and he spent the entire movie just staring at me reacting because I'm just like, God damn it! Like, why do they keep doing this? Like, it's
That's
like
hilarious.
they wrote me in here for $17 and just absolutely like they have their way with me.
That's
Like,
so funny. Yeah, I don't have Disney Plus. Like maybe I'll have to check it out. Maybe I'll give The
it's good.
Mandalorian
It's
another
good.
try. But I actually just like canceled Netflix. I used to be big into Netflix, and like I don't really like any of the shows they got out now. But also just because like during quarantine, you already watch all the shows. One show that I really enjoyed during quarantine, I don't know if you've seen. Have you seen Avatar?
Yeah, great one. Great show.
When did you watch it? How recently?
So I originally watched it when I was a kid, probably, but I watched it again. I don't know, maybe March, and then I watched Legend of Korra after that.
Yeah, so I watched Korra. I just feel like I would have loved watching Avatar when I was like a kid. I wish, but I still loved it. And I made my dad watch it also after I was finished. I told him it was lit, and he's like in his 60s and he still loved it. I don't even think it's a kid show. I think it's just a great show that's like cartoon and like it has some silly aspects to it, but it also has some like deep like meaning, like teaching about all this stuff. And I thought it was probably the best show I watched during quarantine.
Yeah, I think it's one of those shows where like it does really well through its medium. Like I think it's a show that they've attempted through using through movies. They tried making a movie on it. It sucked ass. Like it was made by M Night Shyamalan, I believe. And it was just a bad movie. Like not like you think like all the bending's gonna be so cool, and they just like it's them just like doing like a million hand gestures to move like one little drop of water. It's like what the hell's happening? Um, no, it's definitely a good show, and it kind of it kind of has really good messages and motifs to it, which you really see in well designed TV shows. And I think
Yeah.
you're able to see like sure, like my favorite cartoon right now, probably Rick and Morty. I think it's comedy. I think it's hilarious. But are there any real messages in there? It's more just for the satire thing.
But I thought the thing with Rick and Morty was very eye-opening to me because I never really used to believe in like alternate dimensions and like infinite universe, and that kind of gives you like a whole like it opens your imagination. You're like, oh, this is what like other creatures could look like, because if there are life on other planets and other dimensions, like they probably look nothing like us. It's probably like a couch who's like ordering. I remember one of those like a couch ordering like phones to eat or something, and it's sitting on like a person.
Yeah, no, that was awesome. Like it's a funny show. It really is, and it is eye opening, and it's just like it's pretty raw. It's just they do what they want, and it's I don't know the same creator that made Community. I've never seen that one. It's a pretty good show
Community, like it's not an
with
animated show.
with like Donald Glover and stuff like
Oh
that.
yeah, I actually watched that show a couple months ago. I love Abed.
Yeah, so the same creator that made Rick and Morty.
Oh really?
Yeah, and then yeah, so you just get like there's some people in like Hollywood who are just able to consistently create great content. You know, like personally, like a show I didn't think I was gonna like a lot was The Good Place. I thought it was great. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's kind of it's one of the only shows that's on mainstream television that really address afterlife, that kind of stuff, and it was kind of done through like a comedy sort of satire lens, but it was really good, and it was really not like it didn't like make me want to change my life or anything like that, but it was one that kind of makes you question things and kind of makes you feel good and really think about things.
Yeah, that's the thing with like I like to watch shows like that kind of open my mind. Maybe I'll have to check that out. That like open your mind and like I noticed that like you said like a lot of the television shows on mainstream are actually I don't understand how people like these, but they're very successful and one of the examples I'm going to use is Friends. I cuz I don't watch the show. I wasn't like a person who watched it, but I'll just the reruns will always be on TBS I think, and I'll just be watching this and being first of all, who's this made for? Second of all, why do people think this is funny? And third of all, if there wasn't a laugh track on this, would people think it's funny?
Yeah, so I mean, you're just debunking sitcoms at this point, and it's a thing. So, as someone who do you watch How I Met Your Mother by chance?
Yeah, I was going to talk about that next. I think How I Met Your Mother is just a better Friends. Like I really
Yeah.
enjoyed that show until the ending when they completely ruined it.
Oh, they fucked that up. But basically, so it started off with like Cheers, like the really old show based in a Boston bar. And then they made, Frasier sort of after that, sort of spinning off of that. And then Friends decided that they wanted to take people out of the bar and put them into a coffee shop. And then How I Met Your Mother was like, fuck that. Let's put them back in a bar. Like it's kind of, this sort of never ending sort of changing of what a sitcom really means. But I think with like 90s television, they were super limited on what they could do and how they could do things, especially, but I enjoyed Friends, but it wasn't something that something you write home about. I think
Yeah.
I personally enjoy sitcoms, but like I like Cheers, I like Frasier, loved How I Met Your Mother, one of my favorite shows of all time. And then, except of course for that last garbage season with consistent flashbacks and flash forwards that just
Yeah.
took away from it.
I think the big thing is comparing the two shows is that How I Met Your Mother has a great cast. I think that they're all like very funny. Like you got Neil Patrick Harris, Jason Segel, like so funny. I just don't think I think whoever plays Joey on Friends, like he's funny, but everybody else is just why are you here type of thing.
I think Chandler has some good ones. I think Chandler's pretty funny. But dude, David Schwimmer, not a comedic actor.
David Schwimmer, I don't think he's funny, but I thought he was funny on Entourage. Have you seen Entourage?
Yeah, no, he was commenting on that. Entourage is a great fucking show.
I actually watched that show again during the queue. Obviously, just got to keep up with the shows in the queue, but I love that show. That honestly could be one of my favorite shows of all time. And just having like I love the celebrity cameos like Bobby Flay, like Tom Brady, Mark Wahlberg, like so many just absurd celebrity cameos.
Yeah, no, it's like who's the guy from like Full House?
Oh, Bob Saget.
Like Bob Saget on that show is absolutely ridiculous. Like, and even in like I don't know if you watched the movie, it wasn't that great, but Bob Saget in that movie is also hilarious too.
I don't think
Like,
I've seen the movie.
it's kind of weird. It kind of doesn't have the same sort of vibe that Entourage does. It's kind of, but it's all right. It's not. It's worth a watch if you like Entourage, but otherwise, I wouldn't
Yeah,
recommend it to anyone who wants to watch a movie. I think you need to watch Entourage to really get some of that stuff.
exactly. And it's just like that show is just like the definition of like the boys. Like you watch that show with the boys, it's just like
It's with HBO. They can do what they want. They're paid service. They can do it.
yeah, exactly. And like I watched that show like shout out to Prime just because of like it was
Oh,
on
it had it.
Prime.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm not sure if it's on it anymore. But Another one I was watching a lot of during because it was on Prime and they got taken off was Curb. You watch Curb at all?
Curb's hilarious.
Yeah.
My dad doesn't like Curb though.
Really interesting.
I don't know. He just doesn't like what's his name? Who's the main guy in Curb?
Larry David.
Yeah, he goes. Larry David's an idiot. I go.
That's the whole point of the
I know,
show.
I know, I know, I know, I know. I think it's comedy. I think he just puts himself in the most awkward situations. My favorite one is when he is doing the duel with Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Is
And
that a new season?
I forget when it was, but basically like because he made Hamilton, Lin-Manuel
Yeah.
Miranda. So he's like, you proxy me. So doing like a duel with like paintball guns, and Larry David throws a tie his shoe and just ends up that he's gonna shoot in the air anyway, but ends up just shooting Lin-Manuel Miranda in his mouth with a paintball. And he's just going down, going burr, burr, like Aaron Burr. It's just like, what the fuck?
Yeah, like the whole point of the show is that he's just like a dumbass and gets himself into the dumbest situations because he's such an ass. And it's literally just him and his life and like his friends and like Jeff and everybody. I just think it's so funny.
It is really a good show. It's like I don't know. There's definitely like generational shows. I think I think if you look back from like our generation, I think Game of Thrones until the last season is going to really stand out. I think obviously the shows before that, The Sopranos, you have things like that. But I don't know. I think when there's just a really good show on TV, it really just can do a lot, and it
Yeah.
can run. They can go for a while. Like, dude, Friends had fucking 10 seasons, dude. They were making like
Yeah.
$1 million an episode or some shit.
That's crazy. Another thing that I remember also, I remember really enjoying the Big Bang Theory the first couple seasons, and then it just got terrible after they
Yeah,
started trying to make it. It's, I don't know what they did, but they stopped like actually. I think it really turned it more just turned into adult humor. And that's what because I started watching it in middle school. I thought it was funny, like the whole like Bazinga, all that stuff, and then they just started making like like serious like adult stuff. I don't want to see
they
that.
tried to make it real when they should have just stick to a comedy. And I don't.
Yeah,
It had a good premise for a sitcom. Like it had like a good sort of ability to get a good amount of audiences through like nerdy sort of things, and then also like everything else. And then and then they kind of just blew it. Like,
yeah.
I personally enjoyed it a lot too. And the ending was weird, but I don't know if you saw the ending of that show.
I stopped watching it. But another thing that I just thought about like how these shows are all getting watered down. I remember the kids shows that I watched on like Nick, either cartoon or not cartoon, and then I don't watch any of them now, but I see the commercials and they look like the dumbest things ever. Like comparing to when I was a kid, SpongeBob, Fairly Odd Parents, Jimmy Neutron. Those are all just out of this world shows, and those are never not things that they're ever gonna repeat again. But they should just be playing replays of those. Like they shouldn't be showing kids whatever they have on now
Yeah.
because it's crap compared to it.
Did you ever think like looking back like when we were kids like I didn't realize like how many of the same episode of the same show I was fucking watching because you didn't there was no streaming services. I didn't it wasn't a big DVD family. So I'd be watching like cable or some shit, and I probably saw the same episode of SpongeBob like 150 times.
I loved it.
You know what I mean? No, it's just like, but like you're a kid and you just like that's what you do. Like kids always watch the same thing. You have like kids now who can rewatch Frozen about 50, 60 times.
I remember them making us watch Frozen in like gym class or something in high school, and I was, why are we watching this? Maybe it was a day when we had a sub, and like that's what they do when they have a sub. They make you watch Frozen. I didn't see the hype. I thought the song was really good. What was it? It was Let It Go. I thought it was
Yeah.
pretty good.
No, it definitely I didn't see the hype either. I'm also like not the biggest like Disney like normal guy. I've never been like too into it. I don't know what it's been like. I like Mulan. That was about it. I thought Mulan was pretty good.
I don't think I ever saw it. I really don't know many. I don't really know many Disney movies that I've actually seen. I don't really like Disney. I don't know. And I was never like a big Disney TV show person, other than Phineas and Ferb, obviously. That
You
was
like Sweet Life? Sweet Life on Sweet Life.
Oh, I remember that. The Sweet Life on Deck or Sweet Life of Zach and Cody.
Yeah, both of them. They're all right. They weren't bad. I don't know. I feel like this TV was just a different thing back then. The shows were so different.
Exactly. I also noticed that if you've seen the same trend going on, that basically people that are younger than us have no attention span, so they need to make shows shorter, and that also led to the rise of like TikTok and all of this stuff where people don't have the attention span to watch a 20 to 30-minute show anymore. They need 15-second clips, or they need like 5-minute and under clips. And I think that that's going to be the direction that TV heads towards in the future. And I've already seen it just like declining rapidly. And it seems that kind of YouTube is the new TV and like TikTok.
Yeah, I mean, you think you got the young people, like they love YouTube like that. I mean, I personally think YouTube's great too, but I mean, I'm always someone who like I'll put on a TV show. I think it's definitely a weird thing. Personally, TikTok I think is very enjoyable. I think there's some very toxic sort of things to it, which is a whole different thing, and some very weird things. But it's definitely kind of insane to think about that. A lot of the audience now is has such a different demographic of their viewing how they view things.
Yeah, exactly. And I agree. I don't think it's just TikTok. I think all social media is toxic. And that's one of the reasons I do this podcast and post all the content. I don't know if you've seen any of the content that I post, but like try to post like positive, like uplifting, like teaching people about emotional intelligence, self love, mental health. And I noticed that not many people are doing that because that's not the stuff that goes viral. The stuff that goes viral is the hate, the negativity, shaking your ass on camera, doing stuff like that. And I'm just going to try to like inspire people to try to do more of that, because I would say at the moment, social media is like 90% negativity and being toxic, to the point where like I don't even really scroll through it anymore. I just like do it. I just post like my times every day and then just like get off of it. I don't, what's your experience with using social media?
I mean, I do it like I don't know. Snapchat's like one thing, you're just kind of talking to your buddies, talking to your friends, and then Instagram, like I don't know, I post a lot of just like F1 things, like on my stories, that kind of stuff. I think it's enjoyable. I'm trying to get people to enjoy the sport that I enjoy, but I mean, I don't know. I think it's definitely weird how it puts everyone on this almost pedestal that they put themselves on. It's like I personally enjoy Instagram. I think I love you know some of my buddies on. I think we have some comedy and stuff like that. But at the same time, like if we weren't, all at school and all the way, like we wouldn't necessarily need it as much. I think it's a good way to
Exactly.
some people keep in touch, but at some point, it's also some people just putting on a facade, which I don't necessarily enjoy.
Exactly. I love that you mentioned that, because one of the main things with my content is I always want to be authentic. That's my main priority. And the problem is that's not pop authenticity. Authenticity is going to win in the long run, but everybody is putting on this facade, this mask, wearing costumes, and basically trying to think that you're better than you really are, or better than other people, by using camera filters or whatever it is, and Photoshop and all this stuff. And it just, I hate to see it because it's really hurting people's body images a lot. I mean, I'm not a girl, so I can't say that it hurts my body image, but I know that a lot of girls, it does hurt their body image.
No, there's also a lot of guys who are getting body dysmorphia now too, and it's not necessarily there's people I think it's kind of insane, but like for me, like I've never internalized seeing say like a fitness person, like I never seen like, oh, like why the hell do I look like this, that's never my mentality about it. It's like, oh, he's pretty ripped. Maybe I go to the gym, but it's
Yeah,
not like like I think everyone has different ways of, again, as we said, like everyone's different. Everyone has different ways they internalize what they're getting input into their brain. So some people it's going to result in body dysmorphia. Could lead to things like eating disorders, that kind of stuff, and that's not what you want to see. Like you want to see people enjoying what their existence, enjoying what they're doing.
yeah. And I haven't seen any of your TikToks in a while. I don't know if you posted, but I remember seeing like you were dancing. I think it was like to Savage Love, and I was like, this that just made my day. I was like the funny. I was honestly might have still be the funniest TikTok I've ever seen. And when's the last time you posted on TikTok?
Yeah, so I mean, it comes up here and there, like um, you know, occasionally, I'm with friends, that kind of stuff. We'll make one, but most of the time, like when I started, it was just me, like going to a family dinner, like over like March, April, again maybe being intoxicated, and then just resulting in pretty comedic things that a lot of my friends are just like rolling on the floor about, like because it's for me, like there's things you care about, and you care about what people see of you, but at the same time, like for me right now, it's mostly about is making sure, an employer, it's not like, there's no red flags with that. It's if I can be, as true to myself and do and have fun with things, and it's not, and there's never to a point where it's, negative or tracting from, that aspect of the livelihood, then it's fine.
Yeah, I like that perspective. Like, I think the same way. It's basically, and I also think that, so like from my perspective, me just like trying to spread positive vibes, like trying to teach people things. I don't understand how anybody could hate on that because I'm just trying to spread positivity, spread love. But I actually got one hate comment once and I loved it because I was like, all right, my message is getting somewhere to the point where like I have a hater where somebody wants to comment on my post to then push it
Yeah.
for the algorithm. And I made a post which ended up being my most viral post actually until a couple of days ago when I had a viral post out of nowhere. But I was basically saying, hey, thank you for showing love on my comment or on my post. You're helping me and you're showing me that my message is getting somewhere. I don't know. Have you ever received like any hate comments on a TikTok you posted?
I mean, not really. I think I keep it private. I'm not, necessarily the most, public person. I think, sure, I don't like, hide behind things, but at the same time, like I'm making it for myself and people who I enjoy being around. I'm not really putting myself in a way to like be like someone who, again, I'm a private person, but I definitely know occasionally will, get a misaligned joke or something like that doesn't, land properly. I think that's something that is a whole different cultural thing with a lot of guys, especially our age, is some people say things without really, thinking about what's really being said. Um, but it's not really, a hate comment per se. It's more, and it's also someone, I'm also someone who kind of just brushes off things. I
Yeah.
think it's something that a lot of people don't have anymore. And a lot of people like escalating things. A lot of people like, taking things head on. It's the same points. You got to realize that, is this battle worth even fighting? Is there any real gain for either person? No, because someone venting out towards hate is more just looking at something that's going on in their own brain, their own sphere, their own insecurities, and it's something that I think the more time you spend with other people, you start to realize you start to develop your social IQ and your emotional intelligence, that you're able to spot out things and realize that it's not worth a hassle.
Yeah, exactly. And I know that I'm at the point now where I'm so confident in my message and myself and my emotional intelligence where nothing like that would ever affect me. It honestly just fuels my fire. But I know that there are so many people out there where they could just get that one comment. You get 100 positive comments, but they could just get that one comment which would ruin their day and spiral into ruining their week and ruining their month and ruining their year. And before you know it, this one negative thought, it gets planted like a seed in your mind and then turns into this huge weed. And that's just something I want to try to help other people with because exactly as you said, that if anybody's taking time out of their day to watch your video and shit on you, well, they're not doing that because your video is bad. It might have been bad, it might not have been,
There's a chance it's bad. I mean,
right.
that's just realistic.
There's a chance it's bad. But I know the comment from me, the guy just said like something along the lines of, stop trying, it's not worth it, delete your account now. And I know that he's got something inside him that's just so hurtful. And I know that when I was going through like my depression and anxiety and like very negative, I'm not the type of person, like I'm always like a keep to myself type person. I was never the type of person, I don't think I've ever like commented on a YouTube video or like very few commented on anything, but I was never the person that tries to like throw hate at other people. But I know that now that I found like self-love and I've love within myself, like I would never want to do something that I think could hurt other people because I know that that would hurt me and make me feel bad. So if anybody goes out of their way to try to mess up your day, they first of all have nothing going on, but they also like that's the person who I want to try to reach because they're the person who needs the emotional intelligence, the self-love, the mental health.
Yeah, no, I have a question for you if you don't mind. Um, so I've always pondered sort of, thought about empathy versus sympathy. Um, in my own opinion, I don't think empathy is a real emotion. I think you can
Ooh.
be heavily sympathetic, but empathy means you're feeling what someone's feeling, and you can never really be that. That you can get to a point where you're close, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on what that is.
That's a very interesting question because I know you probably won't agree with this answer because it takes
Yeah,
like I've gone on like the spiritual path over the last like 3 or so years, and it's something that I would have never believed, but it all comes down to the point where in reality, like we think that we're all separate, and everything, all this fear and hate comes from like perceived separation. But when you realize what everything is, that we're all just this one thing, we're all connected in some way, maybe by energy that you can't see. We're all in the same earth, going in the same universe, in the same galaxy. We literally are all the same one. You can always feel what other people are feeling. And you can always, another thing is like telepathy. People don't think that telepathy is real. You can actually think what other people are thinking. It doesn't mean that, but we're not taught how to actually like use and maintain these skills. And one book that I'll talk about all the time, I've been reading it right now. It's called Alchemy by Paul Selig. And this guy Paul Selig is just such a beast. Do you know what channeling is?
I've heard of it. I
It's
would probably need a refresher though.
it's basically like he's channeling these like entities, whether you believe in that stuff or not, that they call themselves like the guides or like they're ascended masters, that they're trying to teach people their message. And whether or not you believe, I didn't used to believe in this stuff, whether it's actually getting channeled or whether he's just making this stuff up, the information in it is, first of all, so useful, but it also is way smarter and way wiser than any human being could just like make up. So the whole point, their whole message is that everybody's one, and you can literally feel what other people are feeling because we're all like our consciousnesses, if you want to use that word, like energies,
Interconnected.
our energies are all interconnected. But the
Yeah.
thing is, we don't, we're not taught, first of all, we're not taught that. So it's hard for people to believe. But second of all, it's not something that you just do instantly. It's something that, because in the book, they try to teach you how to do it, or in another book that I read. And I just don't put the time and effort towards that because that's not something that I want to like try to get good at. I don't want to try to like build my psychic abilities yet, but I know that it's something that they literally say like it's not even like an extraordinary ability. It's
Yeah.
that people have thought for so long that you haven't. And that's a big thing, that our limiting beliefs are the only things that are, yeah, the only things that are limiting us are our beliefs. And people want to hear that and say, oh, that's just like optimistic thinking. Actually, somebody commented that on my video today. They were like, I like what you're trying to say, but like the hope is just fake. Like the hope is false. And I responded, yeah, I remember when I was in a situation like you, and I was so negative and always just like beating up myself for things. But I basically learned to look in the positive side of life.
Yeah.
And I realized that life is 99% perception. You can think that the glass is half empty, and it will be half empty because that's what you're creating.
Yeah. No, definitely. That's a good answer. I didn't really think about it like that. But no, I feel like I've always been someone who like, not that I can't feel for someone, but it's more that, like you can feel, in my opinion, it's like very severe sympathy. Like you're like very like you're almost to that point. But I feel like, especially, without the ability of what you mentioned, like channeling that kind of aspect, I feel like you're not quite attaining what is the definition of empathy. So when people are
Yeah.
like, oh, be empathetic, I'm like, I think you mean like be very sympathetic. It's always kind of just like, oh, kind of irks me. It's kind of just like maybe it's just my own persona, my own ideology on it. But
Yeah. And a big thing is that we also use these words, sympathy and empathy, to try to define things that are
yeah,
really undefinable.
yes,
But another thing that you'll definitely be able to relate to this is that when I was probably up to the age of 19, I didn't feel my emotions at all. I was pretty much like a robot because guys in our society, guys aren't supposed to feel emotions. If you feel emotions, you're weak. You're not supposed to be emotional. And I kept bottling it in and not feeling it. And it basically all like exploded to the point where I was going through these terrible things and I just had to let it all out. And I've realized now that I'm far more in touch with my emotions, that to the point where I can actually feel them and name them, but I couldn't have done that even 2 years ago. And that's something that if they just taught you that in elementary school, it's so simple. But if you've gone your whole life doing one thing, it's going to be hard for you to build that new habit, which it was for me.
yeah. No, I think growing up, it wasn't that I didn't have emotions or anything like that. I think it was more that the emotions that I did have were like very brash ones, like the anger. It wasn't things that can help you grow. It was lashing out. It was getting a fight with your brother for something stupid. It's more it's just anger was used as an output of any other emotional stuff going on. and that's kind of I also taught with being you know a man per se. I think it's that if you are gonna have an emotion, like it's either happy or it's anger. There's nothing in between. Like, and then sure, like you can be sad, but only on these certain circumstances, you know. And I think it's definitely something that I think is changing. I think it's changing for the good, and I think that it takes people to, and it's fucked up to say, but it almost takes all people to reach an ability to do that. It takes hardship, which shouldn't be what it is.
Yeah, I'm very glad that you brought that up because I know that for me, the only reason I started getting into the stuff, the mental health, emotional intelligence, self-love, is because I had this catalyst, which was going through depression and anxiety to the point where I needed to make a change in my life. And I know that these are things that everybody needs to learn, but the whole thing is that nobody wants to learn them until they have to. So
Yeah,
if we can reach people before it gets to that point, you don't have to go through depression to find self-love, to learn about emotional intelligence and mental health. You can learn about it, but the whole point is that people don't seek it because it's not taught to them. People don't seek it until they have to, which is something that I really want to change.
yeah, no, definitely. I think it's something that you see, and then I don't know. It really is something that you know people don't address, and it's not that they don't address it. It's almost that, as you said, they don't know how to address, and it's not like those feelings don't exist. It's not those feelings aren't there. It's just they don't necessarily have a mode of transportation per se of how to get from point A to point B, or even point A to point C. It's not there's no set path in life. There's no set path, but it's finding a way to travel along it and grow and become a better version of yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the big things when I was going through my mental health issues that I didn't tell anybody because there's such a large stigma around these issues. And the stigma is the fear of other people looking at you differently and all these things. But then when you finally open up and tell people, you realize, like, wow, everybody, maybe they're not going through the exact same thing, but everybody's gone through similar things. And when you tell people, when you share, when you speak together, first of all, it's powerful because you help to break this stigma and other people can then speak up and feel like, wow, it's okay to like talk about this stuff because other people, but also you're not going to be able to get help when you're just keeping it all to yourself. And that's another reason I do this podcast is just that if I could just help one person by just sharing something that I did or telling them that it's okay to, one of the big things is that one of my podcasts was asking for help is a sign of strength, not a sign of weakness. We're taught that if you're asking for help, then that means you're weak. But no, you're weak if you don't know how to ask for help. If you don't have it takes courage to ask for help. And it shouldn't be like that. But the stigma is such that like you do need to have courage at this moment to speak up and ask for help.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Okay. This got loaded. Went from Star
Yeah,
Wars to this real quick.
they always get loaded. I'm telling you that it's funny because I never like know where the conversation's gonna go, and it always just like ends up going in like the right direction. It's funny.
It's like it has its own compass and a map, and it's just whoosh, sailing
Exactly,
around.
because it's always like every person that comes on like brings like their own unique life experiences because we're
Yeah,
all going through different things, but we all have like underlying things. Like I'll always say this, no matter what you think or what anybody thinks, all anybody just wants is to be loved. Everybody just wants love. And if they don't get it, they try to blame it on things outside them. And I know I did until I realized that I don't need validation from other people to love myself.
yeah.
And that's really all it comes down to. But nobody teaches you that, even though you could learn that in kindergarten.
I think it's also like something that I've learned is that people love talking about themselves, and it's not necessarily a selfish thing. It's almost an innate human response that not that the most interesting to them is themselves. It's that you know the easiest person to talk about and to list about is what who you are, what you've done, what your thoughts are, and that's a good networking tip for anyone out there who's listening. But it's something that if you really want to leave a good impression, sit back, listen, and try to hear and internalize. Don't be a passive listener. Active listening is a very important skill, but like I think it's just something that it's almost like so selfish to say, but that's just a human response to how they react with each other.
I agree with that 100%. And also the point of all my teaching and everything is I don't want to be like the expert on these topics. I know there are a lot of people who are like
Yeah,
study this and like research this, but I want to be the expert on myself and finding out about myself and teach you how to find yourself and go within yourself because
yeah,
I can't know you better than you know you. I can't know what you feel when you meditate for 30 minutes. I know what I feel. I know we could feel similar emotions, but I also know that it's a completely different experience for any single person. But everybody can do things like journaling, meditating, cold showers, but not everybody wants to. Maybe because they don't want to, or maybe because they've never been told that that's a possibility that that could help them.
yeah. No, there's with every decision that someone makes in life, there's always a part of someone that's holding them back. And like, I'm not a very adventurous person. I'm not going to jump out of an airplane at any point in my life. That's not going to happen. I hate heights. Um, but there's different, challenges you can push yourself through that, you know, how challenging they are is severity in different scales, but if you're like waking up every day and you're deciding to not just to take on a new task, but like even the repetition of a task that you've already done before, you know, like I don't know. There's one of my favorite public speakers. He's a former admiral in the Navy. He said, first step every day, make your bed, because then your next step just sounds like your next step. It makes every step after easier. It's it's not necessarily sure there's days where you're rushed and you don't make your bed, but if you do make your bed, like chances are you're gonna have a better day than if you didn't. I'm not saying you go clean your room, but it's just sort of a methodology about it.
Yo, I'm so glad you brought that up. I was looking behind me because I read that book. I saw that guy's speech and I read it and I started making my bed. And that's the one thing that how the one completed task at the beginning of your day goes out into every aspect of your life. Have you read the book?
Um, no, I saw his speech and then I read a different book from a different admiral actually, which is more about how to get like make sure people around you are getting the support they need to help the collective goal of like say an organization. But
Found
it
it.
kind of there you go, make your bed. Yeah, good one. No, he has a really good speech. It's really all over YouTube and everything. A lot of military people have some pretty good thoughts on task and how to develop oneself.
It's a great read. It's only for anybody who doesn't really like reading books. And this is also something I always talk about is that I noticed that I hated reading in middle school and high school because the books that they made us read were terrible. They were trash. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. They make you read these books that have no impact on your life and they try to tell you that, oh, this means this and that means that. But you could read a book like this is so easy to read. It's 130 pages. The pages are very short. I'll show. The pages are very short, easy to read, and this could actually help you in your life. So, reading books like these could actually help you. And one of the things with reading about his story is that you hear about all the stuff they go through, like SEAL training, and it makes you think, like, wow, if he could do that, my problem isn't even like 1% of what this guy was going through. Sure, he put himself in that situation. He wanted to be a SEAL, but we all have situations that we put ourselves in that we think are unattainable. And you read this guy's stories and you're like, all right, maybe my situation is a lot more attainable than I thought.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think it's also something where you're able to almost draw a pretty good connection between whether it's a small challenge or a strong or a very hard challenge, but you're able to draw conclusions through reading. And I don't know, I've been reading a lot this year, but it's also like there's some books that like are very self-helpy that I don't think do that much. But I think it's find a subject matter that you're trying to push yourself on, whether that's mindfulness, whether that's something for your career, whether it's something for like studying, whether it's something like that, and find a subject matter of books that help reach that goal. If you're just reading to read, like sure you can find some good novels, that kind of stuff, but it's not actually helping you to better yourself.
Yeah.
I think there's a whole like I read the Paul Newman autobiography. I thought it was a great book, but really, does it have any real value to me? No. Sure, I learned about Paul Newman, like like
But also, one thing about reading people's like autobiography is you could get a lot out of it. I mean, I know that I'll also ask you like some books that you'd recommend because I'm always looking for new recommendations. But I started reading this book a while ago that somebody recommended to me. It's by I think Phil Knight is his name, the founder of Nike. It's called Shoe Dog. And I know that just from reading like the first 40 pages of it, like him telling his story, I gained a lot about that from being an entrepreneur and self-development and stuff. So it's definitely like certain books and people's stories definitely resonate. What are some books that you've read recently that you'd recommend to anyone?
Yeah, so most of my books have been staying around operations management, so that and leadership techniques. I thought It's Your Ship, which is another sort of admiral, or I forget what his position was. It's kind of how to manage people and how to ensure that, and it's sort of a miscommunication between the American employment is that if you treat your employees and your people under you with respect and you give them everything they need in a really competitive wage, you end up creating a better organization. It's like that kind of book. And then, yeah, I mean, I've been like a lot of like stuff like operationalized, which is really interesting to me, like the Toyota way, which I don't think is that mindful. It's more just, pretty hammering on about, Toyota production system, which is probably one of the best ones in the world of how they produce things with, really high efficiency, really low issues. And then also Good to Great, I think is a really amazing book. And it's about, it's again, it's a company sort of case study type of book, but it kind of opens your mind up to a different way of leadership and team organization. And I think
Yeah,
that's something that as time moves on, like I think almost all jobs are going to involve teams. I don't think there's much individual work anymore. I don't think there's much individual schoolwork anymore. And this is coming from a college senior, who's almost every class right now, even though I'm really only take one to graduate. But it's more that group work's very important, and being able to effectively manage time within a group and effectively communicate is something that isn't necessarily taught as much. And it's only going to get more important and more important if you're in any type of role.
yeah, I'm glad to hear that. And so how did you find these books? Did somebody recommend them to you or did you just seek them out on your
Um,
own?
so some of them were on my own, like Dale Carnegie's "How to Make
Oh,
Win Friends."
yeah. How to
That's
how to influence people
how
or
to win
something.
friends and influence people. It doesn't sound like that. It's kind of a messed up book if you really think about it by the title, but it kind of teaches you again some of the lessons that I was saying earlier, kind of drawing conclusions from that. But a lot of the books came from meeting a professor and being in a class where you really care about it. Yeah, that book.
I got them all. Got them all.
It's kind of meeting a mentor in a way really helps you decide, take a step and develop. And having a professor who really cared about how to find good information from a book, from a you know and from a case study and that kind of stuff has really helped develop that urge to keep reading and keep developing. And now I'm focusing on other books like that are passions of mine, like F1, as I said earlier, is one of the biggest passions. I'm reading a book by probably one of the most famous car designers in that sport. It's just called How to Build a Car, and it's really really way too technical for me because I'm not an engineer. I did not do science in college. I did not do much math. Um, and it kind of just it's kind of cool because it just takes a passion of yours, a hobby of yours, and allows you to not necessarily learn more, but internalize more of like what it really takes to have what your favorite spectacle, I guess, is to operate.
Yeah, I love that because when you're in high school and you're given all these books to read, they have nothing to do with what you're
Yeah,
passionate about. And some people might not ever read a book again in the rest of their life because they got their like passions dimmed. But then if you somehow stumble upon a book that you're actually passionate about and it kind of opens your mind to other things, it's just like the realm of possibility is actually limitless. And one of the things that really pisses me off is that I'll read a book like this, like How to Win Friends and Influence People. Like I thought this was a truly it was actually funny. Like you could see I like underlined stuff and like starred stuff and all this stuff. And it's a book that I think that anybody should be required to read in high school. Just like how I do agree the title's kind of misleading. It's really just like teaching you how to be like a nicer person, like how to be like a better listener and all this stuff. But
yeah,
I see a book like this that is so valuable and so helpful, and then I'll go and look at the reviews, and some people will be like trash. And it's basically like you could have two people reading the same book, but you choose what you take from it. If you don't want to take anything from the book, that's fine. That doesn't mean it's the book's fault. And that's also what I want to urge people is that find books that you want, but also like go into a book with an open mind and try to get, like, you might not agree with everything, but take out nuggets that you can agree with and internalize and use them to change your life, because they're always going to have something new for you to learn in any book.
Yeah, no, definitely. Even if it's like even if you're reading like Game of Thrones or something like that, if you find, a book that you really enjoy and you're able to, don't, the issue with high school and middle school books is they teach you what to pull from it, as you said. They don't let you pull your own conclusions. They don't let you develop your own sense of what's happening and your own, values from it. And I think that's something that, shouldn't have to be an acquired skill. It should almost be a natural and derived skill from school. But it's definitely something that needs some work. And I know there are some books from high school that I look back on fondly. I think a couple of them I enjoyed, but at the same time, you can't really enjoy a book as much if you're writing a book report on it.
Exactly. And it's also the point that I also know that from high school experience, I think in middle school, all we read was fiction. And I read like pretty much zero fiction now. Maybe the only fiction book I can say that I've read in the past like 2 years was The Alchemist. I don't know if you've ever heard that book,
I think I have, yeah.
but that was an absolutely amazing book. And other than that, I read like self-help, psychology, like spirituality, this type of stuff that really interests me. And it's a shame that we don't really read any like of those types of books. And it's not even like you're trying to push stuff onto people. It's like, don't you want to teach people to be more open-minded and look from different perspectives? And but no, it's everything that you find has to be in like a Shakespeare book or Ernest Hemingway, or the only book that I really enjoyed in high school was 1984. I don't know if you read that.
1984 was good. That was pretty eye opening one.
Exactly. And I
Um,
feel like that's great that we read that because it was like eye opening, but I don't really remember taking much from Animal Farm per se.
no, no, it's a historical allegory. That's what it is,
Ex-
and
It was
historical.
too it was too abstract for me, but also that it kind of seems as though, why didn't we just learn about the situation that they were talking about? I forget. It was something to do with like communism or something.
Yeah, it was all about communism, and it was all about the change of power in the Russian Revolution.
Like if they wanted us to learn about that, a more effective way about learning about that would have just been to tell us what happened and then have a group discussion about that and what actually happened.
Yeah, but no, that's not how that works.
Yeah, and I really like how you said the thing about book reports is that, like, the book reports could be you choosing your own topic and talking about stuff that you really enjoy and looking at your own angle, but it's always the question is like, answer this question, not like come up with your own like question to answer pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely a learned skill to be able to read something and draw your own thesis from it and draw your own thoughts on it. You know, it's not nothing that you like. But when you're in like high school, middle school, they're basically obviously they're trying to teach you the correct path to do that kind of thinking. But when you get to college, like you don't get that support. You don't get that clear cut answer. And then if you're not critically thinking like that earlier on, then you kind of almost putting like a boot on your car. You can't drive like that. It doesn't work.
Yeah. And one of the huge things with like entering college, like if anybody's listening to this who hasn't entered college yet, you'll realize just how much free time you have. You're going to have more free time than you ever imagined. And it's, what are you going to use your free time on? Obviously, freshman year, you'll probably want to party and all this stuff and kind of get that out of you. But even when you're still partying, you're still going to have a ton of free time. And it's, what do you want to try to use that on? Do you want to join a club that you really like or learn a new skill? Because you're going to realize that unless you go to like a super hard college, like you're not going to be spending like 8 hours a day on homework pretty much.
Yeah, no. It's they always say you budget like I think it's an hour. There's a weird mathematical thing they do for how much time you spend for each credit you're doing. I think it's like 2 hours per credit hour of a class per week, which is just not true. Especially, I don't know. I think at most schools, I think it's harder to get in than it is to stay in. Um,
Agreed.
but no, as long as you're, you know, obviously there's people that learn disabilities, that kind of stuff. But as long as you're, being, when you have to do work, you're being critical and selective of what you're doing and you're being smart about it. Like it's never really been an issue. And then all of a sudden you have ample time to use your outlets and do other things.
Yeah. And I want to get your perspective on this because this is my opinion about the whole college thing, the whole college experiment, social experiment, whatever it is, that it's not really about what you learn. It's about the people you meet, the connections, and like building your social skills.
Yeah, no, I definitely think, and I'm a triplet anyway, so I think social's always been pretty pushed on. But I think freshman year, especially early on, like does not matter. I mean, sure it matters. Like you want to have a good baseline for grades, but like the main thing is that you're developing a group of people that you start to develop trust with, and you start to like enjoy being around, and then having support, and then being able to effectively act and act responsibly as a good human. I think it's something that people have to go through and challenge, especially in college. Because in high school, like you're the same people you're with however long. College is a fresh base, and whether you have a new start and you try to better yourself is one thing. Whether you succumb to being an asshole again, that's a whole different thing.
I actually just like remembered, like I haven't even brought this up yet, that you're a triplet. That we have a couple more minutes. I just want to like get your perspective. Like what is that like?
Yeah, so everyone always goes, "What's it like?" And it's I the biggest thing I can say is that it's the only thing it's everyone has different upbringings, but it's definitely I think it breeds almost a competitive nature because it's an easy metric to be compared upon, especially when you're the same age and you all go to the same school growing up and it's still the same university. Um, so it's an easy metric, so it breeds competition. I don't think competition is a bad thing. I think it can bring bad things out of people, but I think if you're clear minded and you have a sound head on your shoulders, you're able to use it to drive yourself and drive success and drive change and positive movement. I think it's a big burden on a family. I think
Yeah.
especially like looking back, like we all played hockey. Like my mom was basically a glorified hockey chauffeur, driving us all around Eastern Mass to everything. But and then you got things like you know, it just, but it's good though. Like my brother's probably one of my best friends in the world, definitely. And I think it creates that ability to look at people and be able to, well, not read them, but like be able to, understand what they're saying, like the subtext a lot of the time, and be able to quickly adjust to different situations.
Yeah. Do you guys have like a thing like the older, middle, younger?
Yeah. So Ricky's the oldest, which is crap, but uh, I'm the middle, so I'm the middle child because I have an older brother as well. But yeah, I don't know. It was more of a thing when I think you're younger, like fifth grade, like fourth grade, like, oh, I'm the oldest triplet, just kids, always like flexing about like my friend was telling me a story like that that she's teaching as a student teacher for like kindergartners, and the kid comes up and goes, yeah, you know why being a Jew's so cool? We get two Halloweens. It's like I mean I'm Jewish anyway, and it's I just think there's like kids do stuff like that all the time. Like they always like flex on things like that, and that was kind of how it was with like age. I just think it's a
Yeah.
funny story. It's like, and then he just went to his seat and sat down. I was like, oh, kids are absurd, but
Yeah.
uh, no, definitely, yeah.
I like how you brought up the whole competition thing because, like, at the end of the day, you want to see them all win. Like, you'd be like celebrating any of their wins. And it's the same thing that I wish people in society would be a little less competitive. And by less competitive, I don't just mean like everybody like sit back and relax and don't do anything, but it's like do your best, but also like cheer on your friends and like cheer on people when they win and like give them their flowers and things like that.
No, I definitely think that. I think you know, there's a human nature of jealousy. I think, like or envy, which is like for me, like I think going through, I think this year a lot of job hunt stuff, a lot of interns, like especially the last couple of years, it's like especially me and Ricky were very similar majors, that kind of stuff. It's almost a competition, like who can get one first and who can, which is like so horrible to say, but it's almost like there's points where I think he's feeling jealous or envious. The point where I was feeling jealous or envious, and it kind of goes back and forth. And it's not that we both don't want good things for each other.
Yeah.
We definitely love each other. Like, he's my triple brother. I'd do anything for him. It's more that just it's like it's because we're also good friends that you kind of have this almost not a rivalry, but like this push to like be just a tad bit better, you know. But it's nothing that I think it's almost a toxic trait, that's for sure. But I think it's something that I'm sure when we get older, we'll phase out of a bit.
Yeah, and like you'll be able to reminisce and be like, that was funny. That's also a funny thing also that I realized that like competition trying to be better than other person is dumb. I think that's stupid. But competition trying to be better than who you were yesterday is
Yeah.
great because you look back, like I look back on myself like 3 years ago and I laugh. I'm like, wow, I was that guy. Like I was an idiot, but now I'm like proud of who I've become. And just to like bring the conversation full circle when we were talking about empathy earlier, do you feel like since you have such a close connection to your triplets, do you feel like you're able to have empathy for them, or is it a little different?
I think it's definitely something that, you know, I don't think I have full empathy for them. I think I'm, you know, able to tell when something's up. I'm able to, you know, almost feel it, but it's not that, you know, nothing more than like I think normal sibling. I think, you know, it's not like we're identical twins where I think we're, you know, split up and somehow, you know, one of us has one brain, one's the other half, you know. It's more that, you know, we're fraternal triplets. Like, sure, we're siblings, sure, we all care for each other, but it's more that I'm able to spot out when something's wrong and hopefully adjust and be able to be their support. But at the same point, it's like, you know, we live our separate lives. You know, especially I'm in college, that's kind of a goal is to not, you know, be almost conjoined at the hip. You know, because high school, you know, I mean, shared a car going to school every day, shared a car leaving. Like me and Ricky, we still the same friend group here, and when we're at home, Jenny not so much, but it's still like when there's three people that are so almost conjoined at the hips, it kind of creates a desire to branch out and find who you are without your triplets.
Yeah,
I think it's almost a defining trait for high school and middle school is like, oh, I'm a triplet. Like now it's kind of just more of a fun fact.
because it's
Huh?
when you're in such a small community, like
Yeah,
everybody knows, and then at a place as big as UMass, obviously your friend groups know, but if you just meet somebody who has no idea who you are, they would have no idea.
yeah. And then it's now we look, and we don't look the same. I think there'll be some similarities, but nothing really serious. But
I actually wanted to bring this up before we have to go, but have you been watching March Madness at all?
here and there, I'm not the biggest basketball fan personally.
I
Because I was garbage at it. Ricky's a big basketball fan, but I've definitely been watching games here and there. Obviously, I have my brackets. I
I
think it's
want
almost un-American to not have a bracket.
I want to get your perspective on this because I was a big Loyola Chicago fan and I picked them to go far. And when I saw their center Krutwig, I thought he looked exactly like you. You know, like the guy with the stash. Like
Yeah,
I remember that I was gonna try to make a meme before the podcast. It was like you and him, like, but you know the guy I'm talking about.
yeah.
Do you see it?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, there's a lot of people say I look like the human version of Shrek from Shrek 2, which I think is a little fucked up. But again, I'll take a joke. I love a nice joke.
That's also the thing, like being able to like take a joke and like laugh and just like when everybody's happy, but also you don't want to be like the punching bag. But I know
No,
you're not
yeah,
like that.
no. I think being able to take a joke and take him on a chin is important. But again, I think everyone knows a limit and everyone knows their limit of how much they want to take. You know, I
Yeah.
think there's no perfect scenario for how many jokes someone's taking. I think every friend group has someone who gets a brunt of a joke. You know, for when I'm at home, I think it's Smith a lot. Um,
Smith.
but yeah, I think it's different everywhere and every different like group dynamic is different. But yeah, definitely take a joke is important, but at the same time, don't take too many. It might be might get a little too many schools on you.
Yo, I could only imagine if I had Smith on this podcast. I'd have to go for like 6 hours. I just have so many questions I'd want to ask him.
I mean,
Oh
he's
my
a D1
gosh.
athlete too. You know,
I
that's a
know.
lot.
He's just so interesting. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. All right.
Don't do that to his face though. He'll blow all straight to his head.
All right. Do you have any final parting words before I sign
Yeah.
off?
Yeah, it was a pleasure being on here today. I think it was really enjoyable. I didn't realize I could, talk for that long straight, but that's how it works. It was a good conversation, and to all the viewers out there, I hope you enjoyed and take something away from this podcast.
Awesome. Yeah, I enjoyed this as well. And for all the listeners who are still there, I hope you enjoyed this and have a great day.